Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Hannah and I am the owner and artist behind Hannah Banana Creations, where I sell upcycled, vintage, and handmade home decor. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use some upcycled materials to create some fun and unique spring decor pieces. All of these one-of-a-kind decor pieces can be found on my website, which you can find in the link down in the description below. Okay guys, so I am going to take this magazine rack, which I find at thrift stores all the time. There's always magazine racks. Honestly, not a lot of people collect magazines anymore. They just take up a lot of room and everything is digital. So I'm going to take it apart for the spindles. And these spindles are actually the perfect size and shape to make some spindle carrots. Plus, it's broken anyways. There's the piece and yeah, don't really feel like fixing that. So we're just going to take it apart and use it for spindles. So let's see how we do that. These magazine racks are actually pretty easy to take apart. Usually when I get one of these racks, I just start off by looking at how it's constructed. And for this one, I just removed the wooden plugs first, and underneath that were these screws holding the handle in place. And then after I removed that, everything kind of just started to come apart as I just went along. Most of the spindles were just glued in place, which makes it a lot easier to take apart. So I used my hammer to just remove the upper frame, and after that it all came apart very easily. Here's a look at all of the spindles I got from just that one magazine rack, and I only paid about $4 at the thrift store, so this is a great way to get a lot of product for projects with just a little bit of cost. I needed to trim the spindles just a little bit on one side to make them a little bit more carrot shaped, so one side would be flat. So I used my miter saw just to do a quick cut on the shorter end of the spindle for a flat top. If you would like to see a list of the tools that I recommend for the projects in this video, you can check out the description below. Now, to continue shaping my carrots, I took my orbital sander and took the smaller end of my spindle and just kind of tried to get it more rounded to give it more of a carrot shape. This would be a lot easier if you had a belt sander, but I don't have one of those at the moment, so this is how I decided to do this. Once I had all the carrots shaped and sanded, I painted them with some chalk paint. I did a couple different colors of them to create some variations. So the first one I did was this burnt orange color. Painting these were a little bit tricky. I did have to paint one end like this and then let that dry and then paint the other end. It was kind of a process, but in the end they turned out really cute, so it was worth it. To create some variation, I painted the other half of the spindle carrots in this light orangey peach color that I custom mixed. This is just a color that I mixed from some chalk paints that I already had in my stash. So if you're trying to use up some old chalk paints or anything in your stash, one great way to use them up is to just mix up your own custom colors and use it for new projects. I wanted to give all of these carrots kind of an aged and distressed look, so I took my orbital sander and flipped it upside down because this was the easiest way to do it, and just did a quick distress sanding throughout all of the spindle carrots. Next up, I wanted to drill some holes in the tops of my carrots to make some room for the greenery I was going to be adding. So to do this step, I took my battery powered drill and this drill bit right here to create some holes in the top. Now the size of your drill bit will just depend on the size of the greenery you're adding. Some people only drill one hole in the top for these spindle carrots. This is a project that's done a lot in the DIY world, but for my version of this project, I like to drill 3 small holes in the top and add a little bit smaller sprigs of greenery. Once I had all of the holes drilled into the tops of the carrots, it was time to add my sprigs of greenery. You can find these greenery picks at all different craft stores and Walmart in a various amount of places. And what I do is just buy a bundle and then tear it apart for the little tiny pieces and then trim it up to use for the tops of spindle carrots like these here. There are a wide variety of different kinds of greenery you can use for this project. In fact, I used a couple different variations in this video myself, so it really just is up for your personal preference. So to attach them, I just put some hot glue in the holes that I pre-drilled on the tops, and then I just stick the stems into the holes and let that dry. To complete this project, I sealed up all of the spindle carrots individually by waxing them with some all-natural beeswax that I had on hand. And you can seal these in a variety of different ways. You can use a top coat or even like a spray top coat, but I like to use wax because it's a little bit easier to use and it's safe from chemicals and odors. Once I had applied all of my clear wax, I used a microfiber cloth to buff out the wax and remove any excess that may be remaining. And then here's just a little bit of a comparison between the waxed and the unwaxed. You can definitely tell when they are sealed versus when they are unsealed. And then I just repeated this step on every single carrot until they were all sealed and protected. And here's the results of this DIY project. I do have a variety of these available on my website if you are interested, so be sure to check out that link in the description below. For this next project, I'm going to be taking some of these rusty bed springs that I've had in my craft stash forever and making them into some really cute bird nests. The first step was to actually create a little nest to set on the top of the spring. So to do that, I just took some Spanish moss, which you can find at a variety of craft stores. Then I cut off a bunch and kind of just smushed it all together and shaped it into like a nest shape. This is the easiest way I found to do this. You can buy nests pre-made, but I find that that's kind of expensive, and you can find Spanish moss at pretty much any store, including the craft stores and Dollar Tree. To attach the nest to the spring, I just used some hot glue and went around the top edge and then set the nest on top of that, making sure that all of the area around the bottom was securely attached. Now this would not look like a nest without a little egg inside, so I painted up some plastic eggs that I had in my craft stash. And to do that, I first took some acrylic paint and just poured it out into this little container. And then I added some baking soda to it. Now what this is going to do is just make my paint a little bit more textured. I wanted these plastic eggs to look a little bit more realistic, so adding texture to it will definitely help. I got an entire pack of, I think, 24 eggs for about $2 from the store a while back. I've had these in my craft stash for a very long time, so it's finally time to get them used up. So to decorate them, I took my textured paint finish and just kind of pounced that around to add a little bit of texture. This egg does have a mold on it that I added for a little bit more extra detail. That is optional, but if you would like to know which molds I used on this project, you can see that in the description below. Most plastic eggs do kind of have like a little vent air hole on the end, so to make painting these a lot easier, I took a wooden skewer and stuck it through that little vent hole. That way I could easily paint around the entire surface of my egg without getting paint all over my hands. This is going to be a layered and textured paint finish, so this is just the first layer, so don't freak out. I know black eggs aren't typically what you see for Easter, but it's a process, so let's keep going. To add some color to each of the eggs, I took my chip brush and did a dry brush layer on top of the textured paint that I had already added. So the textured paint layer underneath is going to definitely help with this layer, just give it more dimension and help the dry brush effect turn out even better. As you can see here, I'm using a variety of different brush motions to add even more texture to this piece, so it's really up to whatever you prefer. You can add as much or as little texture as you please. While all the eggs were drying, I added little picks of greenery to all of the nests just to add a little bit more spring flair to the effect of this project. I do have a little bag of these tiny greenery pieces stashed away from like bigger pieces of greenery that have fallen off. It's a whole crafter thing, you know, if you know, you know, but they do come in handy for small little projects like this when I need to add just a little touch of details. So I used some hot glue to add little leaf pieces all over the nests to give it kind of a more realistic effect. I wanted to add a little bit of sparkle to these eggs, so I took this gold Art Alchemy wax and just accented all the highlights using my finger. Waxes are a great way to add more depth to your projects or even accent the highlights on your projects. You can see the links to the waxes I used in the description below. To make sure all of the eggs were secure inside the nests, I did add some hot glue onto the bottom of them and then just set it inside the nest just like this. That way the egg won't fall out once this is displayed. And I felt like all these little nests needed a little something extra, so I took this vintage lace bow and added that to the front of all the nests to add just a little bit of more cute spring flair to it. And here's a look at the final results of this upcycle. I really love how these all turned out. They are so freaking cute. And if you'd like to own one for yourself, check out my website link down below. For this last upcycle, I'm going to be using some of the eggs I used for my previous project, but didn't quite need them for that project. So taking the eggs that I already had the textured black paint finish on, I dry brushed a layer of different spring colors on them. Again, going with a textured finish, I used my chip brush and just kind of pounced the colors on each of the eggs. I did about 5 different colors, sticking with things that were kind of springy and more pastel, since I was going to be setting each of these eggs into one centerpiece, and you'll see how everything comes together in just a few minutes. add some fun effects to these eggs and to make them a little bit different than the previous project, I wanted to add some little speckling effects like you see in bird eggs out in the wild. So to do this, I just took some water-based acrylic paint and plenty of water to water it down a little bit. And I'm just going to be adding some paint splatters onto each egg using a Dollar Tree toothbrush. This is the best way to get a speckled effect on any of your projects. It is very messy, so just be prepared for that, but this is a great way to add some texture to some spring eggs like this. I did a layer of brown and white speckles just to add some more color variations to this piece, and then I grabbed this chicken feeder. Yes, it is an old antique chicken feeder from my craft stash. I live in Iowa, so farm items like this are everywhere, and I think I only paid $1 or $2 at a garage sale for it, so it's a fun piece to upcycle. Then I just fit in some Spanish moss into the middle to fill it up, and I'm going to be setting the eggs on top. To fill up this chicken feeder, I probably used about 1.5 bags of moss, and you can get this moss from the Dollar Tree, so it is not that expensive to fill it up. After painting all of the eggs, I carefully placed them into the chicken feeder and just kind of arranged them into a way that I thought was pleasing. I decided to not permanently attach these eggs to this piece. That way, if the person who purchased it wanted to use it for a different holiday or wanted to change out the filler, they could do so. And again, to add more spring flair to this project, I added more greenery pieces. That way it just kind of gives it more of a fun spring feel with the pieces of greenery and definitely helps give it a fresh look. And here is a close look at how this adorable spring centerpiece turned out. I absolutely love this piece. I've honestly had this chicken feeder in my stash for a while and have wanted to do this project forever, and I'm so glad I did because it turned out amazing. Here's a quick look at some other spring upcycles currently available on my website, so check out that link in the description. And if you love upcycles, DIYs, and furniture makeovers, then be sure to follow and subscribe for many more projects to come.